Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I've got the Emperor, the number 4 card, as the obstacle, and the Three of Swords as the opportunity. I always love the design of this one. It just looks intense. Looks really sad. Um, I like how effective it is at communicating an emotion or a feeling. It's rainy in the background. How is this going to be an opportunity? Anyway, let's jump into the Emperor here. Some interesting differences between the Marseille deck and the Waite Smith deck. We'll get into that in a sec. In terms of the journey, there's certainly a way to look at obstacles as like something that's holding you up. Like like in psychology, there's often focus on childhood development being arrested or interrupted at some point, and some life event just freezes you at a particular point of development. And I don't think this is necessarily just limited to childhood. I think people theoretically could have a very, I don't know, healthy rate at which they mature, but sometimes in life, at any point in life, I think you can get stuck at a particular spot. And one of the things that I like about the tarot, in speaking in general here, in terms of the meta, big picture kind of stuff, is I like the way that tarot reminds me of things being a journey, a process. I think of it as kind of like the Tao of the tarot, like in a Taoist sense. It's like it's the path. There's no, in my opinion, there's no goal of any single card that you want to land on. Even though often some people, when they're first exposed to the tarot, they kind of go through the different images, and they pick one of the characters. They're like, oh, I this is who I am. I want to identify with this one, which I think it's an interesting, totally relatable, but nonetheless interesting interpretation of what the tarot is about. Also, I have some reservations about referring to the tarot as the fool's journey. There's a lot of people that think of it as the fool's journey, and I don't think it's any more the fool's journey as it is the emperor's journey, or the empress's, or the hierophant's, or the page of swords. It's each one of these representations of archetypal human experiences, I think, is in some way at least meant to illustrate how you got there, where where the next step, could be. And yeah, and I think that in terms of obstacles, often it's a case of things not working out because you're kind of stuck in a particular point. That's often how I read the inverted cards. Normally, when you would do a reading, if you get a card upside down, um, I think a lot of the issues arise from a lot of those kind of negative issues arise from stagnation, overstaying your welcome, so to speak, not moving along when it's your time. But yeah, the emperor, I think, here as an obstacle, the emperor generally symbolizes, you know, it's the state of balance in the physical world of human beings. Human beings have needs, they have desires. This inspires individuals to engage in politics, in governing themselves and others to try and get what they want, and especially what they need. This card is much more on the physical worldly plane than something like the Lovers, which is a similar card in the sense of it representing an order and a balance. But this is an emperor. This guy symbolizes a ruler that is there, and I see him as a benevolent ruler. He's there. He deserves the position. He's there both because he's extremely wise, like in the Marseille card. His blue beard and hair, it symbolizes this spiritual maturity. it's the spiritual color, and he's got long hair. He's been around. He's seen a lot of shit. He's got a lot of wisdom and experience. And then also, I think this card does a good job also depicting that he's not a pushover in the realms of the physical. Underneath that nice royal kind of getup, he's still wearing armor underneath there. He's ready to throw down, and theoretically, he's the most powerful individual. That's how he manages things. That's how things get to this perfect state of balance. Now, he's not the guy to address spiritual, metaphysical, possibly even cultural needs and situations, but in terms of getting people food, making sure the barbarians at the gate aren't burning down your villages, in terms of that kind of management of people and the things that are physically required in the world. This is the guy, right? And as the inversion here would imply, something's wrong with this guy. Either he's overstayed his welcome after, you know, maybe the people, once this state was brought about, the state of balance, maybe at a certain point, everyone's just getting along really well. Maybe this person isn't really needed as much anymore. But maybe this is the kind of guy who, at that point, instead of moving on, ideally, this person would then move on to the role of the hierophant, the role of the person who is able to guide people from that world of, physical concerns. It's like, okay, we got all your physical stuff pretty much taken care of. You've got a warm place to sleep and live. You got your food. No one's knocking down your door. You don't have to worry about violence. You got those basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got the first couple taken care of. Like, you now have the opportunity. It's now time to move on and start thinking about some deeper issues. Start thinking about meaning in life, whether you look for that in the spiritual or in the creative or artistic, in family life, in relationships. The lovers are a card that's coming up in the future, but you get your basics taken care of. You want to start turning your attention to other things. Mind you, this is an individual who is, he's not letting go. He's still insisting on, managing those basic things. So this card could certainly be a reflection of maybe, in the most, I guess, naively optimistic sense, it could just be the fact that you've gotten all these things taken care of, and you haven't seen anything in life that seems to pull you past just this basic saving money. Like maybe your your biggest aspirations are saving up for a house, saving up for a trip or something. It's the obstruction here could be not looking past securing and maintaining those basic needs, and then and associated with that is the kind of personality that thrives and excels at doing that. It's really good to have this kind of emperor aspect when you're getting your shit together, when you're enforcing the kind of rules that need to be in place for things to work out well, in assuring those basic physical human needs. But that aspect to govern needs to relinquish at least some of its control and authority to be able to move on to other things, to move on to to explore things. So I feel like that's an interesting. Oh yeah, and as far as the preceding card, the Empress, I see the Empress as symbolizing like a state of nature, but almost like a really violent state of nature. I really kind of like thinking of nature as being chaotic and just kind of brutal, like there's no there's no laws that plants observe there's no social niceties. It's like plants are constantly fighting for control over sunlight. They fuck each other over, they strangle each other. It's just like this, and especially in the spring, I see the Empress is kind of symbolizing the spring. It's like this brutal struggle for dominance that happens every spring, like plants just shooting up, trying to climb over each other to get closer to the sun, roots diving deep into the ground to try and, you know, out outpace each other deeper to the, to the water reservoirs, to the minerals. Um, and yeah, and I think looking at that, the emperor is the emperor is a really rational response to that, to trying to manage that. Like, it's not necessary to manage all of it, because the empress also describes, I think, a time and a place where human beings aren't really like the matters of human beings aren't really the focus yet. It's just kind of nature on its own, Um, but yeah, the emperor shows up when people start interacting with that, and they start interacting with the the violent, chaotic, unpredictable nature of nature, which, you chaos is great in the sense that it just brings about the possibility for so many different things to happen. But if you're gonna have any sort of regular life, maybe if you're gonna be like some nomadic traveling hunter gatherer, maybe you don't need to tame nature, to redirect or dam up rivers to irrigate fields that you're going to use over and over. But if you're going to stay in any one spot and try and create any sort of stable, balanced existence, it's like you need something like the emperor. So it's a totally rational, sensible sort of force to channel, to call into being. It's just, in this case, I think it's kind of I think this card does, this card's kind of asking to think about in what aspects is this theme contributing in a negative way. In what way are you over scheduling, over rigidly trying to get things to conform um, to something that where the reason for it is like, oh, we're just trying to look out for ourselves, after we're looking for like a balanced way of living, something like that. And then yeah, the three of swords. So this is the the three is taking place in a it's a again, it's kind of like a volatile, changing environment, much like the Empress. And I read this card as the ideas, the very first ideas and realizations, concepts, abstractions that a person develops in the face of uh, a changing and random world, and they can be really painful. They can be really annoying. One of the things that this card reminds me of is the theories surrounding the psychological, the early psychological development of children, of infants. It's theory, because we have yet to, as a species, we have yet to create, a 3-month-old child that can, have a chat with us and explain to us how it's feeling, what kind of a day it's having. So a lot of this is inferred and hypothesized. But there's this idea that when we're first born, we don't even really, we can't even conceptualize any separation between us and the rest of the world. We don't have an idea of us being this separate thing. So we just kind of live in what is often described as the oceanic experience of, of infancy, where like there's no difference between, we essentially, it's kind of like a Taoist Zen-like goal to get back to this sort of state. You, as a baby, like if you're crying because you're hungry and then your mother feeds you, it's like you don't yet recognize that your mom is this separate entity that is responding to you crying. It's just, you are hungry, you cry, you are satiated. These are all just totally natural, singular experiences. And the theory then goes on to suggest that when children first start becoming aware of the fact that they are not their mother and they are not their father, they start getting this incredible separation anxiety. I don't think that's the right word for it now that I think about it, but it's like this anxiety of abstraction where all of a sudden you realize, like, oh wait, I wasn't just a universe that was feeding myself and changing my own diapers when I needed it. Like, I'm actually just a really weak, dependent, fragile thing, and there are these other things that have all this power and ability, and I'm essentially helpless. And that starting to understand that there's that separation is incredibly painful and anxiety inducing. I kind of see this card as, pointing to that as the original experience of this, but it could be any other, like, worldly physiological, so not abstract and not really related to people yet, but just any realization of just some physical reality that when you realize the concept, it causes anxiety and discomfort, right? So it could be something like, the first realization of, um, like, how fragile you are, um, because of an accident. You break a bone, and it's the first time you've broken a bone, and it's not just that it's a painful, undesirable experience physically, but your innocence is shattered. You used to, maybe you didn't even think of it. Like, it's not like you thought of yourself as being invincible, but this wasn't a limitation that you needed to be consciously aware of, right? And now all of a sudden it's like you'll never be the same, right? Um, experiencing, yeah, I see it as experiencing some sort of limitation or pain or damage that just occurs in the physical world. It could even be something like the natural deterioration of an object. Maybe you had something that you really liked, you left it outside, it got rained on and destroyed, and it's the first time you had that realization. Again, probably a lot of these deal with early childhood experiences, but I think that the world never lets us down in terms of its ability to surprise us with new potential letdowns. Um, Nonetheless, I think where the opportunity in this lies is, I think this card has a powerful, like, it serves as a powerful reminder that can be really grounding. It's, in a lot of ways, it's really similar to this Empress card. The Three of Swords. The Three of Swords is like the psychological, not necessarily emotional. There's certainly emotions that are accompanied in this process, but it's like the cognitive, uncomfortable, probably cognitive rational interaction with something like the violence of nature, beautiful and terrifying as it is, right? Um, so it's an important, I think it's an important reminder. It could be something that could ground us really well in just the basic reality of the world. Like, the physical world is changing. Things don't last forever. Things age and decay and become weak. Also, things are born and things get strong. But there's, that change is a reality, right? So it helps. I think focusing on that might even help specifically clarify the position of this sort of emperor as obstacle here. If this is someone else, that you're dealing with, it might help to remind them or approach them from the position of, like, look, we're never going to be able to control everything, right? There's no perfect state of security. It's at a certain point, and don't get me wrong, this isn't like an argument against working towards stability and security in some sense. It's just this emperor signifying a stagnation of someone has overstayed their need in this position. Yeah, I love how many like segues I'm just resisting going on here with the state of the world and the politics of freedom versus security. It's like these are really ancient political and philosophical debates that people have had, for a long, long time. But yeah, so this would be a good thing to remind this kind of emperor figure of, or if this is a limitation that is happening in yourself, then again, this would be, I think, a good card to meditate on. And in terms of the neighboring cards, this is an experience that can even come as a direct, it could be caused by something like the Page of Swords. Like, this is an individual who is out there in the world pursuing knowledge, looking for information, gathering data, gathering sense experiences, not so much the emotional ones, but it could be seen as like a spy sometimes, or it could, like when it's kind of in the negative sense, could be seen as like a researcher or a scholar, someone going out gathering information about the world. So sometimes it could be a really discouraging thing. You were all excited to go out into the world and approach it in this scientific, objective, information gathering way, and then some of the information you come across just kind of just destroys you. You're like, oh, I found out the most depressing thing. But again, the ideal Page of Swords is just going to be out there doing their work, gathering their data. They may arrive at this point sooner or later. They might uncover something that is just gonna be one of those harsh realities of the world. And the way the way the tarot, I guess, depicts moving forward is finding a type of balance and reassurance in the experiences of others. I think that's how I read this. It's like nothing that's happening to you hasn't happened to a lot of other people in the past, at least in some sense. And there have been great people. There have been huge thinkers, brilliant genius poets and painters and artists that have probably confronted some version of the kind of truth about the world that you just uncovered now. And there is an extensive legacy dating back millennia of people confronting the same harsh reality that you're confronting. And so it's looking towards it's in a way how Swords enters into the first card of people, of human beings, right? The 4 is like the first one. And it's the ideas of the active people that, let's say metaphorically, take up swords, take up the act of abstract thinking, but it also honors in this case, it looks like the 4 of Swords is depicting some sort of, it's like what do you call it? Like a crypt. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but like this ornately decorated, possibly gold, tomb that some great hero, great thinker is being kept in. And it looks like it's in a church or something. It looks like possibly an entire religion or belief system has been founded around the ideas of this individual. And I think looking at this as a progression of growth and evolution, the way I would read into it is that great individual was great and had all of this respect built around them because they dealt with that hard reality of the Three of Swords particularly well. This might be an experience that happens to a lot of people, maybe almost everyone, but those people that we really respect and hold highly in our cultures and our religions, in our politics and folklore and stories, are the people who are really great at dealing with those harsh realities of life. So it's something that is very potent. The Three of Swords is a potent reminder of things that could really get us moving, really get us acting. Kind of reminds me also of, like, I don't know, I feel like Nietzsche wrote a lot about, like, this is one of the things that we should never let go of. We should never use reason and rationality to make things like the Three of Swords go away. It's like we need to always remember what those harsh truths are, because it's in the it's in the context of those things that we can only truly experience, like joy, happiness, love, all of those things. Like, if you're comparing love to, like, a pretty good state of, like, being on my own and being pretty happy, or I could be in love, it's like, in that scenario, love isn't contextualized to being the same experience as it is when you look at love, or like absolute loneliness, having no one in the world, being this vulnerable thing, right? It's like that's what potentially gives love so much meaning, or any other thing, safety, security. Food tastes really, really good. It tastes a lot better after you haven't eaten for a couple of days. That's for sure. One of the reasons I love fasting, that first meal. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. Oh yeah, wait, before we go, the three of Swords and the Marseille. Yeah, I really love how when you line up all of the sword cards, they form these circles. I wish maybe I should update my little thing here so I can rotate them around. Make it visualize what I consider to be like the turning of the mind, the rotating of ideas. But yeah, thanks for watching. Drop me a like if you had a good time. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you want to be entered into a draw for a free reading. I'm going to be doing those every Sunday. You can enter as many times as you want. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.